This is a nice review paper on barriers and opportunities for resilient and sustainable urban forests. A review means it's quite long and has lots of very nice, beautiful references, I think about 95. So also means I'm going to be brief and just try to make the most salient points, and I choose the salient points, so you obviously want to go read the paper if this is a topic of interest for you. As cities heat up and expand in an area and population, urban forests offer a nature-based solution to enhance livability and reduce rising temperatures in cities. However, urban forests are vulnerable to climate change and face costly establishment and maintenance challenges. Here we explore four key ecological and socio-economic barriers to achieving resilient urban forests: species selection, tree supply, tree life cycle, so establishment, maintenance, and irrigation, so finding water, etc. And finally, community engagement, because without the community engagement, forests likely will not survive for long. We discuss how integrating traditional urban forestry practices with emerging technology offers a holistic approach to creating resilient, sustainable urban forests that can adapt to climate change while meeting community needs. Okay, so we'll just read off some text, the upfront introductory material, and some key front material of each section. Basically, the points we made here about the choices, maintenance, establishment, irrigation, etc. A major challenge. So just jumping already ahead. After talking about all the great things about an urban forest, major challenge, however, is in designing resilient cities. Given accelerating rates of climate change, increasing biotic risks, and urbanization. Consideration of complex and often interacting ecological and socioeconomic factors to identify and overcome barriers is required to achieve sustainability and resilience to climate change. To this end, urban forests, that is naturally occurring and planted trees and other vegetation growing throughout a city in streets, parks, woodlands, vegetated plots, residential yards, and roadside verges. These are broadly used as a nature-based solution. Urban forests contribute to sustainable urban development by improving human thermal comfort and livability through positive effects on human health. There is also a lot of literature on human well-being, which is different than health. It's about your ability to stay mentally alert and active and do everything at your best ability. Urban forests also help to mitigate the effects of increased temperatures through evapotranspiration and shading, and hence improve building energy savings. However, building energy savings, not building energy savings. However, urban forests are vulnerable to climate change and other biotic stresses. Rising temperatures, changing precipitation patterns, and other extreme events associated with climate change, such as heat waves, droughts, ice storms, and floods, can lead to stress in urban trees, cause direct physical damage, and increase their susceptibility to pests and diseases. Here are some examples of urban tree vulnerabilities to extreme weather events across the globe. Tree damages associated with the cyclone in Padua, Italy. That's hardly a big tree, but still you see many of these. Leaf damage after an extreme heat wave and drought event in Sydney. So they are basically focusing on urban trees. C is a tree uprooted by a windstorm in Foz do Iguaçu, Brazil. Tree collapse resulting from ice formation on the tree canopy in Nanchang, China. Well, simple examples nonetheless. So obviously leading issues: species selection and a diverse tree community. Climate change combined with unfavorable urban conditions such as limited soil and water volume can affect tree growth and the health of many species through drought and heat extremes, as well as pest and disease outbreaks. This results in many tree species experiencing poor health, high mortality, and the consequences and the consequent reduction or loss of ecosystem services. Thus, one key challenge in urban greening projects is the identification and selection of resilient species that are well suited to current and future site growing conditions and resistant to pests and diseases. So you have to choose greening projects with care to mind the resiliency of the species you are choosing, something called local environmental knowledge as to which trees can grow in the given environment, of course remembering that environments are changing very fast, but also that means you have to also keep in mind climate change for the next decade or two. Whether trees grow up and then survive the adverse conditions is not always clear, because it depends on how quickly the environment changes. And then there is always, growing season getting longer, but also winter getting warmer, which means pests persisting longer and making trees vulnerable to diseases. Jumping ahead, new approaches that consider stress resilience and the capacity to deliver ecosystem services need to be integrated with the more traditional horticultural and botanical interests in meeting the objectives of future urban plantings. Through the establishment of urban forests model scopes, urban forest model scopes, that is forest plots for monitoring and training, new species and cultivars can be tested in cities and their performance can be monitored. A global urban tree trial database can help identify tree species most suitable for urban plantings in different climatic regions and local scale contexts. So as everybody is trying it, they can all log it somewhere so others can learn from them and take the transferable solutions that match their climate and other factors. Adequate, socioeconomic factors. Adequate tree supply for diversity and resilience is another factor. The availability of tree species in nursery production and plant supply chains is a barrier to urban forest sustainability. Plant material is often not available in the numbers required and on timelines needed to meet demands of urban greening projects. Nursery growers can be aware of this part and the part they play in meeting the challenges of greening cities in a constantly changing climate. So nurseries themselves have to worry about climate change as well. But unfortunately, there are few standardized strategies, protocols, and guidelines integrating future climate change that can be widely implemented to guide plant production itself. For example, most commercial nurseries in the USA have not yet explored the effects that climate change may have on their operations. Thus, it's likely that nursery industry will need to propagate a wider diversity of tree species, including species new to nursery production. So they are doing things for a long time and it's a good business, but maybe they are not aware what's coming down the pipeline in terms of impacts of climate change on their business. However, barriers do exist to achieving the goal of urban forestation. Many years of production time are needed to bring new species or cultivars into the market with no guarantees of selling the product when it's ready. Changing the nursery stock exposes nurseries to economic risk if they do not have a fixed or contracted buyer, which may result in unsold plants remaining in nurseries. So, millions of trees in New York City planting program used contracts to diversify and scale up the production of stock needed for that massive planting effort. But if that's a one-off thing, then the nursery owners are still left to worry about continued business, right? So it's a tough business. How do you incentivize nurseries to take risks, and what happens if the business goes kaput after they experiment and produce species that are more suited for the changed climate or changing climate and so on. 4 ecological and socioeconomic barriers to achieving resilient, sustainable urban forests. These barriers are species selection, tree supply, tree life cycle, so establishment and maintenance, including irrigation, and finally community engagement, which we talked about in the abstract. Resilient and sustainable urban forest, then tree supply, tree life cycle, species selection, where you worry about diversity as well as resilience, and community engagement, addressing tree cover inequities and access to resources. So if you build a nice park but it's in a rich neighborhood and poor people do not have access or too far from them, then you have lost part of the society that lives in that city. It's very easy to have sharp gradients in wealth and facilities as well in city centers or even outside of the city center. Stressful tree life cycle is another concern. Planting of urban trees, their long-term maintenance and their eventual removal require strong and long-term economic investment strategies which compete for budget allocation with other urban services and infrastructure. This is always a problem. So we can say how urban centers will be much better off with sustained forests, but that itself will require a special line item in the budget and mainstreaming into the fiscal policies, etc. How do you raise funds for that? Are you going to put a park tax on people, and will that help the poor people at all, and so on? So successful tree life cycle can become critical, including establishment, maintenance, water, and costing it into the budgets for sustained forestry. Providing water for irrigation, of course, is critical. Irrigation is generally considered a best practice in arboriculture, especially during the establishment years, and is an important component in the maintenance of urban forests. Irrigation of urban forests is recommended in a variety of urban climate contexts and will probably be required to alleviate future drought and extreme heat events as well. However, it's increasingly an unsustainable practice in many arid and semi-arid cities where water security is paramount. So you are competing interests. Thus, promoting the right species pool in terms of water use efficiency will be key in these cities, along with innovative systems to recycle urban wastewater to be used for watering purposes. By contrast, in some cases, consideration of stormwater flows and use of green space is required to reduce risks from flooding. But you can see that retrofitting existing cities for this is going to be again a cost-benefit evaluation issue, and it could also end up disrupting life, traffic patterns and traffic jams and so on. Examples of urban management practices and community engagement across the globe here. The use of tree watering bags in London, UK. So you can see these bags here. In India, they do kind of a earthen pot with a little hole that provides kind of a drip irrigation as well. What is B? Those are A and B. And C is structured to support the establishment of ficus spp tree in Malaga, Spain. Malaga is also a beautiful place, so you can see how they are helping the trees survive. That's quite common actually. Passive stormwater rain garden in Washington DC, USA. So this helps with reducing runoff and providing better water infiltration and water for the trees. And here E, community engagement in an urban street planting project in the city of Newcastle, Australia. School kids can be involved in this. There can be community forests that everybody participates in, and so on. So community engagement and access to resources. The distribution of tree canopy within cities can be highly uneven, such that certain neighborhoods have more urban green spaces and tree cover than others. The so-called luxury effect. This often stems from legacy effects of historical patterns of urban development, discrimination, investment, or land use policy, and so on. Residents of some neighborhoods often face challenges in accessing green spaces owing to factors such as lack of public transportation, public access limits, urban sprawl, or perceived safety concerns, right? So LA is an example where police departments can request the removal of trees if they interfere with aerial surveillance operations. Criminals are running around and the police wants to chase them, but trees are in the way and you chop off the tree. What the hell? Anyway, So vulnerability to the effects of climate change, such as extreme heat events, can be higher in neighborhoods with limited green infrastructure and inadequate access to cooling effects provided by urban forests. So there is a kind of a multiplication of inequalities when forests are put in rich neighborhoods and poor neighborhoods are already suffering. A heat wave will not affect everybody in the urban region the same way, right? If you are rich with AC and AC cars, whereas people in poor housing, informal housing, may only have fan or nothing, and they have to travel to work by buses which are not air conditioned and so on. In some cases, however, residents may not see the benefit of greening programs owing to other more pressing priorities, or may harbor deep concerns about urban tree disservices, so negative effects of trees due to their lived experiences with municipal disinvestment or inadequate municipal tree care, and so on and so forth. So incorporating co-design and co-production in urban forestry engagement and implementation is essential to understand and provide desired benefits from urban forests while decreasing tree disservices. You know, we talk about ecosystem services, food, fiber, medicine, shade, well-being, etc. Then we talk about tree disservices. A path towards resilient and sustainable urban forests then. Resilient and sustainable urban forests require comprehensive management plans to secure and support urban development. Such plans require promoting a high diversity of tree species, notably native ones, but also well-integrated exotic species with support of spontaneous recruitment processes in appropriate areas, integration of geodiversity, including hydrology, in green space planning, community engagement, and consideration of socio-ecological inequality in urban spatial planning. A collaborative effort among governments, urban planners, nurseries, researchers, environmental organizations, and residents is essential for the successful execution of these plans. Setting local goals based on relevant information can help in implementing actions, and monitoring and evaluation will provide information to adjust these needs. Whenever you implement these things, monitoring, evaluation, and reporting is always critical. Overcoming barriers we have outlined requires an integrated urban forest resilience framework. Within this framework, a diverse portfolio of stress-resilient species needs to be developed for each region, with species selection based on climate projections and cultural preferences and local ecological knowledge that I mentioned before. Emerging technologies such as artificial intelligence and machine learning offer transformative potential for urban forestry, aiding in species selection by integrating real-time climate and environmental data to enhance adaptability. Okay, so these tools can monitor tree health, optimize water usage, and forecast tree growth, enabling proactive urban management and strategic planning. Virtual reality allows the visualization of future forest designs, and civic science and AI-driven image recognition can engage communities in tree identification and monitoring. Digital twins also get used now to some extent to see the impacts before you go and start planting trees. The next step to resilient urban forests is a sustainable tree supply from the nurseries, which should implement high-quality production standards and ensure a consistent stock of stress-resilient trees. Maybe governments can own the nurseries. A lot of parks have their own little nurseries. Partnerships among governments, nurseries, and research institutions are essential for forecasting demand and optimizing the supply chain. These collaborations can be complemented by local tree propagation programs to reduce transportation costs and support local economies and enhance the sustainability of urban forestry practices. Now I want to read all of this because we already mentioned recycled sewage water for water use for planting, which works very well. You can also enhance remote sensing image resolution, early warning signs of drought such as canopy browning, and use AI and machine learning, so AI powered satellites, aircraft, drones, etc. can be used for real-time management and monitoring of irrigation practices, effective and efficient use of water for irrigation of urban forests. Okay, national and local governments may need to reassess the opportunities to implement policies that incentivize and support the creation and maintenance of resilient urban forests. Governments may also need to allocate sufficient resources to support urban forestry initiatives as public health and sustainability needs. Although there are no universal solutions, the ideas discussed here provide a basis for addressing specific challenges faced by cities across the globe. Integrating these insights into new approaches to urban planning and development, together with collaborative and equity focused policies, will contribute to creating more resilient, sustainable, and livable cities. Livable, well-being, all these are good words and they are very important. Cities attract a lot of people, economic opportunities, of course, and they are innovation centers. The ecosystem, there is a relation between metropolitan population and number of patents and so on, which is very interesting. But you can also imagine that maybe we'll have lots of artificial trees capturing CO2 and also providing green cover in a very realistic way with all the benefits of a real forest. So they can be sustained and also reduce carbon emissions. Okay, so wait for more good news on this front. Okay, and see you in the next topic.